Thank you for tuning in to Love in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, Soulmate Palmist Spiritual Teacher, Love Coach, author, and speaker. We're sharing stories of love and connection and lessons learned along the way. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to ignite soulmate love fast using an innovative system to help you end loneliness and toxic relationships and elevate your vibrational energy to soulmate love and deeply compatible partners. Get started for free at loveinyourhands.com. And now here's your host, Cynthia Clark.
Hello there, everyone. This is Cynthia Clark. I am your Soulmate Palmist and Spiritual Teacher. And if you're interested in finding long-lasting love, you can always just go over to loveinyourhands.com and you can get started for free. I have an excellent show for us today. I'm super excited about bringing in this beautiful guest, and I know you're going to love her too. Her name is Sherry Richert Belul, and she helps people find creative, intentional, and impactful ways to celebrate life and to express love for family and friends. And you know me, I'm all about love, so I'm excited to hear about this. As a certified high-performance coach, Sherry supports people in living their best lives, full of joy, success, engagement, and meaningful relationships. She is the author of Say It Now, 33 Creative Ways to Say I Love You to the Most Important People in Your Life. And you can find Sherry over at simplycelebrate.net. So welcome to the show, Sherry.
Hi, Cynthia. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
I'm so happy too. I'm happy we finally got this going. I know we've both been kind of busy. So tell us a little bit about you and how did you end up writing this beautiful book?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. Well, the truth of it is that the title, Say It Now, comes from my history of every time that I would go to a funeral. I would really love, people tell stories and they have all the photos and there's all these appreciations for the person who's passed away. And I would always either say out loud to whoever I was with or think in my head, why don't we say it when people are alive? Why don't we say it now? And it sort of became this refrain in my head and actually a mantra that I've lived by, which is that I try very much to say it now. So I think it's really important that we practice not waiting until it's somebody's birthday, not waiting until it's a special occasion, not thinking, oh, well, I'll tell them when I'm feeling more open, but to say it now, no matter what.
I love that because, I grew up in a family where we really didn't express our love for each other. I'm the youngest of 4 children. And so, I grew up in Utah, pretty Mormon type family, pretty normal for Utah. And, but we never really told each other we loved each other. And we were very reserved just in our feelings. Like I really didn't feel like I could express myself to the rest of my family. I kind of kept to myself. Like I played by myself. I didn't really have a lot of friends when I was a kid. And I definitely had a hard time, saying I love you and things like that. And it's interesting now that I'm an adult, my husband is he's like the total opposite. He's just like, he's always saying, I love you, I love you, I love you every single day, which was at first it was kind of this like, whoa, I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I can receive this. And he started telling my mother, I love you, Mom. He would say that to my mother because his mother is deceased. And she just told me just last week, I so appreciate Pat telling me that.
Oh.
Because she also had, just being in that dynamic, I don't know why we just didn't express it.
Right. And it's so beautiful hearing you talk about that, right? Because I think a lot of us grow up. I did not grow up in an expressive family in that way. And it's a practice. It is a practice. And I think it's beautiful. I don't even know Pat, but now of course I love this right about him. But that when one person does it, it models it for other people. And it's something that I think that we all start to feel a little more comfortable with, right?
Yeah, totally. It's completely turned me around. And now I can tell my mother I love her too, because it's like, wow, okay, well, if my husband, who's not even related to her, can say this, why can't I say this? So it's really beautiful.
It is. And the other thing I want to say about the reason I wrote the book is that the ideas in the book are, a lot of them are creative ways. So a lot of them are things that could be given as gifts. And I'm such an advocate for gifts that are experiences, or gifts that are ways of deepening relationship. So they might be my very favorite gift of all time. You've probably heard me talk about it, is called a love list. And it's just specific reasons we love someone. So, it's very, like if I were making one for Pat, I already would say, Pat, I love that you're so free at expressing your love for other people. It role models so much for people around you. Like it's like, that's something very specific about Pat. And so I encourage people, partly because it's such a beautiful thing for the other person to hear, but partly because it changes us, right?
Yes.
When we're immersed in love and creativity, I think we can't help but feel really, really good.
I agree. Yeah. It reminds me of when it was my mom's birthday one day. I gave her a card, because she does appreciate birthday cards. Who doesn't, right? Who doesn't appreciate birthday cards? And what I did was I analyzed her hands.
Oh.
And I made her a list of all of the beautiful qualities that she had in her hands. And it was from that perspective of, it's right here. Like, I'm just reading this. I'm not doing it from where I know you, but it's from what your hands are literally saying about who you are. And she said it was the best card she ever received.
Right. And the thing that I love about it, Cynthia, is, because this is something, and I know you too, because you're a relationship person, right? It's that was also such a relationship gift, because reading palms and reading hands is so much who you are, but that
Yes.
it's so that gift to her was about both of you. And to me, that's what I'm really interested in, gifts that it's kind of like, almost like it's just tailor-made for those two people. Because I think, just like what happened with your mom, I think there's something that happens on a whole different level than just that beautiful gift that you gave her. Right.
Yes.
I don't know. I just think there's an energetic gift that goes along with it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I love about hands so much, is they express that truth in a way that is totally objective. It's like, well, I'm not making this up. I'm just reading the language, essentially.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I'm excited to read for you, because you have some amazing stuff in your hands.
And I have never had anyone do this. So I'm so excited too.
Because I feel like it just gives people that new perspective. And you probably already know yourself pretty well based upon the work that you do, obviously. But it's just sort of fun to get it from that different perspective. So let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to pull up your hand. Nice. And it's going to be really fun.
I love to do this.
Yeah, this will be really fun. So, and everybody's hands, of course, are unique, and they express essentially a mirror into who you are. So the first thing that I read in your hand was that you have what we call air hands. Okay, and how we determine that is you have long fingers relative to your palm, and you've got a square palm relative to length versus width. Okay, so pretty square. Okay, so your hand shape forms by the time you are about 6 years old, and it is with you for the rest of your life. Okay, so air-handed people are very curious, and they are also very thoughtful. So that kind of makes sense that you would come up with a beautiful book to be thoughtful and creative. And then we look at the strong finger. And in your case, your strong finger is your index finger, which we call the Jupiter finger. I'm also going to maybe move over here to your other hand, and we can see that. So we measure the finger relative to the other fingers. Okay, so in this case, your index finger is measured relative to your Apollo finger, which is your ring finger. And because it's longer, it's considered strong. So this combination we call strength. Okay, so you are the strength archetype, which Jupiter brings in the visionary. Okay, so you've got this beautiful vision of what you can see. Definitely somebody who's not afraid to self-evaluate and explore what is your vision. You know, what do you want to see come into the world? That's the Jupiter energy. And combined with the air, definitely I see that communicator, that curious communicator. And it comes through in a way that's like a loving service kind of a way. So that's just from your hand shape. Now you're, as far as like who is your best match or who do you get along with, you definitely do best with fire hands, which is going to be short fingers and a long rectangular palm. And you would do well also with people with a strong middle finger, because your fingers also have elements. So this is your water finger, Jupiter. And so that would go best with the earth finger, which is Saturn. So the combination that would be very good for you is the lover's archetype, which is somebody who is interested in relationships. So that's that's a very good match for you. Okay, so the next thing that I looked at is I read your fingerprints. Okay, now fingerprints actually form on your hands 5 months before you're born, and they never ever change. Okay, so that represents your soul imprint. Okay, so when you think about coming into this body, into this experience, you have an agenda, a soul agenda, and it is going to impact every part of your life. Now, for you, I saw, and I'm not sure if I blow this up, if you can see these or not. I really had to blow them up.
I can't believe you can see the fingerprints. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, the picture has to be pretty decent for me. But yeah, we can clearly see this is a loop, you know, on this, we're looking at your right hand, middle finger. A loop just is like a wave pattern that comes up and back around. There's actually 14 different types of fingerprints you can have.
Wow, Cynthia, this is fascinating. I love that you know all this.
Yeah, I've been analyzing hands now for about 12 years.
Wow.
So yeah, this is very fascinating to me. And then if you look on like this finger, you see the circular core. That's what we call a whorl fingerprint. So you have a total of, looks like 2, 4, 6, 7 loops and 2 whorls and 1 tented arch. Okay, so that is your chart. Okay, whorls are about 25% of fingerprints. Loops are about 70%. So you're right on average in the number of loops that you have. And tented arches are actually less than 2%. So they are by far the least common type of fingerprint. Is the tented arch. I'm going to see if I can blow this up so you can kind of see. The tented arch looks like a little tent pole right in the middle of the pattern. So it rises up and then it comes right back down in the middle of the pattern. So there might be a little bit of looping, which in your finger there is a little bit of looping, but definitely this is a tented arch fingerprint. So Okay, so adding all of those up. Okay, so essentially this is a map of who you are, and it brings in, you're definitely in the school of love. Okay,
I like
school of love and closeness. Okay, so this is like your glasses that you wear as you go through life. You came in to experience love and closeness
that.
and to share love and closeness. So again, this is like makes perfect sense, this book that you wrote and what you're all about. And on a soul level, you also came to experience those feelings, those the different gamut of emotions.
Huh.
Okay, so that's on a soul level. Okay, now in terms of your purpose or your soul's agenda, we look at the world fingerprints. They're located on your right Jupiter and your left Saturn finger, which we would call the visionary mentor. Okay, so the visionary mentor, this is somebody who is looking at um, the bigger picture of things. You want to bring in a bigger vision, and you want the mentor is somebody who has the high standards of integrity. You really want to help people to reach their high integrity,
Hmm.
and the your natural teacher. So
Hmm.
coaching, teaching, guiding, advising, any of these things are actually very appropriate for you.
Hmm.
So does that make sense so far?
So far, perfect sense. Yeah, this is great. I love it. I love what you were saying before about, that it's all like just the truth that gets revealed. It's so interesting.
Yeah, hands are, to me, they're the most revealing way to just understand a person from a deep level really quickly.
Hmm.
So that's why I love hands so much. So you also had a couple of markings that I wanted to notate as well. You have a loop of humor, which is a beautiful marker, by the way. It's located in between your Apollo finger and your little finger, which we call Mercury, and it's a Palmer print that shows up just like a fingerprint pattern, but it's in the palm. Okay,
Wow.
so that's kind of fun. So so this is where it's located. So a loop of humor is somebody who wants to lighten things up, not take life too seriously. You can make other people laugh. You can show the value of leisure, that kind of thing. Like, how do you make work fun? That sort of thing. how do
Hmm.
you yeah how do you make stuff fun? So that's a really beautiful marker. And then you also had what we would call a bow of intuition, and that is located as a line in your hand. Okay, so we call this the Mercury line, which is located underneath your little finger, and it's oftentimes it's straight, but
Uh-huh.
occasionally it does curve, and then we would call it a bow of intuition. And it just represents your ability to hear your inner voice and tap into your inner voice. And it connects into what we call Luna, which is your area of your subconscious. And so that that ties in very nicely, I think, with your purpose of the visionary mentor.
Hmm.
So for you, what's good for you is being authentic in your feelings
Hmm.
and expressing them appropriately. And if we look at your heart line, which is right here underneath your fingers, okay, so it's a major line in the hands. By the way, all the lines in the hand can change. They ebb and flow like rivers of energy. So they show your free will. Okay, so we have, of course, the destiny aspect, which is the fingerprints. Then we have the archetypal perspective, which is the hand shape. And then we have the free will aspect, which is the lines. So that's what makes hands so exciting, because they kind of layer on top of each other, and you can sort of see like what's going on. Okay, so the heart line is your emotional flow line. It shows how you express your feelings. Okay, now, are you right or left-handed?
I am right-handed.
Okay, so this is your active hand. Okay, so your heart line on your active hand is going to show how you relate more to people, like the public, you know, people you maybe don't know as well. And I would say in this case, you're kind of earthy. So you do keep your emotions sort of in check. Like
Uh-huh.
you're not going to just blurt out what you're feeling necessarily. You're going to be sort of cautious.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also going to be a little more cautious in terms of like, do I trust this person right away, or do I get to know them a little bit more? You're going to be a little more on the cautious side. And your best match, by the way, would be a water heart line, which would curve all the way up to the Jupiter finger. Okay, so we look at harmonious aspects. So on your passive hand, just looking at that, you've got what we call a semi-simian line, where your heart line and your head line actually join together. But they also have elements of their own line. So this is actually quite rare. I would say it's only about 3% of the population will have kind of this joining together. But it has to do with your feelings joining up with your thinking. Okay, so it brings in more of an intense focus, and you can become very specialized in whatever it is that you're focusing on. Okay, so I can see you being, you know, like a top level visionary mentor, in other words.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, pretty cool. But yeah, so again, we look at the quality of the line. I would still say this is earthy though, but it brings in elements of air when it kind of conjoins like this in this sort of semi-simian formation. So it's somebody very thoughtful about emotions, but still you're going to show it through your actions rather than just through words. So yeah, so I can see you creating experiences for people.
That's really wonderful.
And that's kind of like what you were just talking about too.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I love
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense how you tap into that with this type of line. And it's definitely not your typical kind of heartline headline combination. So yeah, so that's what I see as like your major themes in your hands. Another thing that I do notice is you've got a little bit of a separation with your little finger from the rest of your fingers. This is fairly common. It can show a little bit of like somebody who can tap into different ways of thinking. It shows that you can think of your little finger like your antenna, and it shows that you could go away from like the norm or the normal way of thinking. So again, I would suggest tapping into your Jupiter, your visionary aspects, and really connecting with what is your vision. What do you want to see? You know, because you do have that little bit of separation. Okay.
This is just so much fun.
Yeah. So yeah, hands are just so interesting, aren't they?
Well, and I have to be honest with you. I have never really thought about it this much, right? Like when I was looking at my hands on your screen, I'd suddenly just really it's like a map, right?
Yes, exactly.
And I just find this is one of the things I love the most about life, right? Mm-hmm. That I'm 55 going on 56, and that all of a sudden there can be a whole new map. Yes. I love that, right? Because there's so many things, right? We turn to so many things to know ourselves, and here's one that I've not consulted.
I know. Yeah, it was the same way for me when I first started reading hands. I didn't know anything about it, and I picked up a book on palm reading one day at the library, and I just took it home, and I'm like, I don't know if this is valid. It could be just, you know, a bunch of bunk. And I had this deja vu experience where I was like, you've read this before. and you've studied this before, and you need to study it again. It was so clear to me that I've been doing this forever. So it
Wow.
chose me, basically.
And when you think about it, like why would we have all this if
Exactly.
there wasn't, I mean, I don't know. I just, now that I kind of got chills a little bit as you've been talking about this stuff, because I think in the past I would have just thought of it kind of like wriggles, right? Like,
Yes.
oh,
Right.
whatever. I just have these
Yes.
weird lines. But when you were talking about it, I really thought that it's also mysterious being a human
Yes.
being.
Yeah. Well, I believe that things are not random. And, there is absolutely a reason why our fingerprints are 100% unique to us. And yet there are recognizable patterns that we can read. So, I mean, to me, it's just like, of course it makes sense that the body is trying to communicate with us and trying to tell us who we are. I mean, we come in with a map. How could we not come in with a map? It makes perfect sense. It's like, well, if you're going somewhere, what do? You have a map. You figure out where you're going, right? So when you come into a body, of course you're going to have a map.
So beautiful. That is so beautiful. So we come with a map imprinted, so we won't lose it.
Exactly.
Or not, we
Exactly.
didn't have any pockets when we first came in. I love
Yes.
that. And I think you said, did you say they develop 5 weeks before we're
5 months before you're born is when you get your fingerprints.
5 months?
Correct.
That's crazy. Those
And
little itsy bitsy tiny little baby fingers.
yes, I know. It's amazing when you think about it, because I mean, when does the soul go into the body? I mean, this is a good question, and I can't prove this, but I speculate that the soul comes into the body when the fingerprints form. That's my hypothesis.
So fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
And can I ask you, since you mentioned it, that you feel like this was something that you've done before? You meant like a different life, a different
Yes.
you, a different.
Definitely.
Wow.
I feel like I've been doing it probably for many lifetimes.
And from what you know about hands, would that other you maybe have some similar something in your hands, do you think?
Well, that's a good question. I think every lifetime has a different agenda. So you're going to have different fingerprints, but your personality might be similar. So maybe your hand shape is similar, and maybe you have similar lines, but I would say every lifetime is going to vary based upon the choices that you are destined to learn and the people who you're destined to meet. I think it's all going to vary slightly. But yeah, I can't prove that one way or another, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But it's fascinating to certainly think about.
It is, isn't it? And what I'm really grateful for in this moment that I'm feeling, especially, we're recording this during the time of COVID. Who knows what's going to be happening whenever it airs? But at this moment,
Right.
at this moment, the world has kind of, for me, felt like it's gotten a little bit smaller. Whereas once I was traveling a lot and I was out in the world and meeting a lot of people, it's gotten a little bit smaller. But this conversation is so big and broad. And I'm so appreciating that, because I know for a lot of people that I'm in touch with right now, people are longing for kind of a bigger picture right now.
I agree. Totally. I
love that your work is like opening that door, to a bigger perspective.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I really do feel so strongly about palm reading that it's so helpful. I mean, just to be able to see who you really are and know who you're compatible with, and yeah, what are those attributes? You know, I mean, you've got that beautiful strength archetype, which is bringing in that loving service and that growth perspective. You know, you bring that's one of your attributes that you bring to anybody who you come in contact with. You know, the strength archetype also is often depicted with a beautiful woman in white who is sitting or standing next to a lion. And so there's courage around her. She's courageous. She's strong. She's petting the lion, so the lion is tame. And this comes from the tarot. So the archetypes correspond to the tarot. And she's got an infinity symbol above her head, which represents she's tapping into the infinite wisdom, and she's utilizing it to help build strength and courage for others. So that is your energy.
Love that. And what's interesting is that I've had a couple, maybe 3 or 4 dreams where lions have come to me. I love this. They're very memorable dreams because I would at first be scared, but then they would end up just like lying down next to me. And one I remembered was licking my ear. And
oh, wow, that's so cool.
Right. I thought like I can remember these dreams because I was like initially really scared, but then it was these friendly lions. So I think that that's really interesting.
Yes. And dreams are always messages from your higher self. So your higher self is trying to communicate with you through symbology of dream language. So yeah, the lion representing that courage, that confidence, that that feline femininity, right? And then licking the ear. The ear is about hearing. So it's like it's telling you to pay attention to what are you hearing. Okay, so that's how I would interpret that dream.
I love that. So you obviously also know about dreaming.
Yes, I've been studying dreams more and more actually since April. I decided to have a dream journal right next to my bed. And I used to be one of those people who never could remember my dreams. And but I knew that they were important. It's like, well, maybe I'm just not doing it right or whatever, you know, like I was trying to figure it out. So I took some training around dream analysis and dreaming and lucid dreaming and all sorts of stuff. And it turns out that you can remember your dreams if you really work at it. And there's certain ways to do it. And that now, as soon as I remember, I wake up, I immediately grab my notebook and I write it down. So that I don't forget, because you can lose it in a flash.
I know.
I mean, it's so fast. So it's like, okay. But yeah, it's quite interesting. And then I feel like you can also take the dream language and you can apply it to your hands as well. So for example, if you know what the lion is representing, it's like, well, where is that strength archetype? And it's like, well, it's right there in your hand shape.
Oh.
So that's another just confirmation that that's your archetype.
That's so great. Since I have you here, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Just because I had a dream last night about my grandfather.
Okay.
Belul, I was telling you, was his name actually.
Okay.
And I never dream about my grandfather, ever. But I had a dream that I was in his house and he was alive, and just that in itself was really significant to me. Do you know anything about, like, what would that mean?
Well, he is still alive. I mean, as far as like spirits never die, souls never die. So it could be that he's coming just to tell you that he's okay. And he's probably watching over you, and he might be wanting you to ask him for either advice or guidance or assistance. Because we cannot, as spirits, we're not, when we're in the spirit world, we can't interfere with the free will, because that's part of being on earth, is we have free will. Right. So he can't like intervene unless you invite him to. So I feel like he wants to be of service to you. He wants to help you, but you need to ask him.
I love
Okay.
this. Thank you. I feel like this was very important that I almost didn't bring it up because I thought this is not appropriate, but
No, it's all appropriate on my show. It's all good.
oh, well, I'm not an expert here. But you know what? I feel like that's all part of it, right? Because here you are in front of me talking about dreams. And if I didn't ask you, I wouldn't have gotten that, listen, right?
Right.
So I love that.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely another thing to keep in mind about people in your dream is that they also represent different aspects of you.
Uh-huh.
Because of course we're all connected anyway. We're all one essentially. And so an older male in your dream could also be the male aspect of yourself.
Oh, interesting.
So you can also look at it that way, because every character in the dream is actually you as well. So looking at the male aspect of you, asking yourself, okay, what does the male side of myself want and need right now?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So that's another also way to sort of look at it and analyze it. Because I will often have dreams about men in my life or my husband or whatever. And I kind of look at it both ways. I look at it as, okay, I look at it like my husband in the dream, but then I also look at it like the male part of myself.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I had the dream about my grandfather, and then I had a dream about Brendan Burchard, who I worked for, who is also sort of a business mentor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my grandfather was a business person. And
yes.
I think maybe there's just something interesting in what you're saying. Like
yes. There could definitely be parallels.
Yeah.
Because the dream is always, there's a lot of layers that you can kind of dive into. So it's fascinating.
I love the world that you live in because it's feels, you just said multi-layered, right?
Yes.
And I feel as if there's a way that we could just live in this, we just live in this plane and be like, oh, hi, this is me, this is my life, right? Or we could live with all of these layers and possibilities. And I just find that so much more fun.
Me too. It's the only way I like to live.
And that's why I say, like, back to what we were saying in the beginning, it sounds woo-woo, but I feel like I can say this to you. But so when we're making a one-of-a-kind gift for someone, or we're planning an adventure for them, or we're doing something that takes some real thoughtfulness and love that's happening, I do feel like there's a layering to that gift that when we give that to the person, there's something so much more that we're presenting than just like if I went to the mall and bought you a sweater.
Correct. Yeah, right? That makes sense.
So, to me, there is a parallel in everything we're talking about and in my work, even though it looks totally different. But I think that there's a similar, there's a way that we can look at life as being much more than it looks on the surface.
Yes, definitely. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So why don't you tell people how they can find your book and how they can find you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Love that. So the book again is called Say It Now, and it's easiest to probably just find it online right now because nothing is open at the moment, but it's available at Amazon. And my website is simply celebrate.net. So my website, I hope, is a really fun, playful place to be. You mentioned that. It is true that I like to bring joy to everything, even like hard times, even depression, even I've got a whole history of depression, and I really feel like it's important to bring joy into all of it, and then it's possible.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you.
Oh, I love you. This was so much fun.
And thank you everybody for tuning in. Remember that life has more meaning when it's shared. And if you're interested in having me read your hands on the show, just go to loveinyourhands.com/podcast and you can apply to be on the show. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Love in Your Hands. Please rate, review, and subscribe to show your support. Have a question for Cynthia? Just post a comment. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to find soulmate love fast. Start your free Soul Connection membership today, upload your hand photo, discover your relationship archetype, and start finding soulmate matches. Just go to loveinyourhands.com to get started.